The Monkey's Paw by W. W. Jacobs. And so this is a first published 1902, and then it was also featured in The Lady of the Barge in 1911. And this is a classic. I guess it would be Edwardian at that point. But anyways, we still love it. It's still magical. Be careful what you wish for. You may receive it. Anonymous. Part 1. Without, the night was cold and wet, but in the small parlor of Laburnum Villa, the blinds were drawn and the fire burned brightly. Father and son were at chess, the former who possessed ideas about the game involving radical chances, putting his king into such sharp and unnecessary perils that it even provoked comment from the white-haired old lady knitting placidly by the fire. "Hark at the wind," said Mr. White, who, having seen a fatal mistake after it was too late, was amiably desirous of preventing his son from seeing it. "I'm listening," said the latter, grimly surveying the board as he stretched out his hand. "Check." "I should hardly think he'll come tonight," said his father, with his hand poised over the board. "Mate," replied the son. "That's the worst of living so far out," bawled Mr. White, with sudden and unlooked-for violence. "Of all the beastly, slushy, out-of-the-way places to live in, this is the worst. Path's a bog, and the road's a torrent. I don't know what people are thinking about. I suppose because only 2 houses on the road are let, they think it doesn't matter." "Never mind, dear," said the wife soothingly. "Perhaps you'll win the next one." Mr. White looked up sharply, just in time to intercept a knowing glance between mother and son. The words died away on his lips, and he had a guilty grin in his thin gray beard. "There he is," said Herbert White, as the gate banged too loudly, and heavy footsteps came toward the door. The old man rose with hospitable haste, and opening the door, was heard condoling with the new arrival. The new arrival also condoled with himself, so that Mrs. White said "tut tut" and coughed gently as her husband entered the room, followed by a tall, burly man, beady of eye and rubicund of visage. "Sergeant Major Morris," he said, introducing him. The sergeant major took hands and, taking the proffered seat by the fire, watched contentedly as his host got out whiskey and tumblers, and stood a small copper kettle on the fire. At the third glass his eyes got brighter, and he began to talk, the little family circle regarding with eager interest this visitor from distant parts, as he squared his broad shoulders in the chair and spoke of his wild scenes and doughty deeds, of wars and plagues and strange peoples. 21 years of it," said Mr. White, nodding at his wife and son. "When he went away, he was a slip of a youth in the warehouse. Now look at him." "He doesn't look to have taken much harm," said Mrs. White politely. "I'd like to go to India myself," said the old man, just to look around a bit, you know." "Better where you are," said the Sergeant Major, shaking his head. He put down the empty glass and, sighing softly, shook it again. "I should like to see those old temples and fakirs and jugglers," said the old man. "What was that you started telling me the other day about a monkey's paw or something, Morris?" "Nothing," said the soldier hastily. "Leastways nothing worth hearing." "Monkey's paw," said Mrs. White curiously. "Well, it's just a bit of what you might call magic, perhaps," said the sergeant major offhandedly. His 3 listeners leaned forward eagerly. The visitor absent-mindedly put his empty glass to his lips, and then set it down again. His host filled in for him once more. "To look at," said the sergeant major, fumbling in his pocket. "It's just an ordinary little pole, dried to a mummy." He took something out of his pocket and proffered it. Mrs. White drew back with a grimace, but her son, taking it, examined it curiously. "And what is there special about it?" inquired Mr. White, as he took it from his son, and, having examined it, placed it upon the table. "It had a spell put on it by an old fakir," said Mr. Sergeant Major. "A very holy man. He wanted to show that fated ruled people's lives, and that those who interfere with it did so at their sorrow. He put a spell on it so that 3 separate men could each have 3 wishes from it." His manner was so impressive that his hearers were conscious that their light laughter had jarred somewhat. "Well, why don't you have 3, sir?" said Herbert White cleverly. The soldier regarded him with that middle age is wont, the way that middle age is wont to regard presumptuous youth. "I have," he said quietly, and his blotchy face whitened. "And did you really have the 3 wishes granted?" asked Mrs. White. "I did," said the sergeant major. and his glass tapped against his strong teeth. "And has anybody else wished?" persisted the old lady. "The first man had his 3 wishes, yes," was the reply. "I don't know what the first 2 were, but the third was for death. That's how I got the paw." His tones were so grave that a hush fell upon the group. "If you've had 3 wishes, it's no good to you now, then, Morris," said the old man at last. "What do you keep it for?" The soldier shook his head. "Fancy, I suppose," he said slowly. "I did have some idea of selling it, but I don't think I will. It has caused me enough mischief already. Besides, people won't buy it. They think it's a fairy tale, some of them, and those who do think anything of it want to try it first and pay me afterwards." "If you could have another 3 wishes," said the old man, eyeing him keenly, would you have them?" "I don't know," said the other. "I don't know." He took the paw and, dangling it between his forefinger and thumb, suddenly threw it up on the fire. White, with a slight cry, stooped down and snatched it off. "Better let it burn," said the soldier solemnly. "If you don't want it, Morris," said the other, "give it to me." "I won't," said his friend doggedly. "I threw it on the fire. If you keep it, don't blame me for what happens. Pitch it on the fire like a sensible man." The other shook his head and examined his possession closely. How do you do it?" he inquired. "Hold it up in your right hand and wish aloud," said the sergeant major, "but I warn you of the consequences." "Sounds like the Arabian Nights," said Mrs. White as she rose and began to set the supper. "Don't you think you might wish for 4 pans of hands for me?" Her husband drew the talisman from his pocket, and all 3 burst into laughter as the sergeant major, with a look of alarm on his face, caught him by the arm. "If you must wish," he said gruffly, "wish for something sensible." Mr. White dropped it back into his pocket and, placing chairs, motioned his friend to the table. In the business of supper the talisman was partly forgotten, and afterward the 3 sat listening to an enthralled fashion to a second installment of the soldier's adventures in India. If the tale about the monkey's paw is not more truthful than those who had been telling us, said Herbert as the door closed behind their guests, just in time to catch the last train, we shan't make much out of it. "Did you give anything for it, father?" inquired Mrs. White, regarding her husband closely. "A trifle," said he, coloring slightly. "He didn't want it, but I made him take it, and he pressed me again to throw it away." "Likely," said Herbert with pretended horror. "Why, we're going to be rich and famous and happy. Wish to be an emperor, father, to begin with. Then you can't be henpecked." He darted round the table, pursued by the maligned Mrs. White, armed with an anti-macassar. Mr. White took the paw from his pocket and eyed it dubiously. "I don't know what to wish for, and that's a fact," he said slowly. "It seems to me I've got all I want." "If you only cleared the house, you'd be quite happy, wouldn't you?" said Herbert, with his hand on his shoulder. "Well, wish for 200 pounds, then. That'll just do it." His father smiled shamefacedly at his own credulity, held up the talisman, and his son, with a solemn face somewhat marred by a wink at his mother, sat down and struck a few impressive chords. "I wish for 200 pounds, said the old man distinctly. A fine crash from the piano greeted his words, interrupted by a shuddering cry from the old man. His wife and son ran toward him. "It moved," he cried, with a glance of disgust at the object as it lay on the floor, "as I wished to twist it in my hand like a snake." "Well, I don't see the money," said the son as he picked it up and placed it on the table, "and I bet I never shall." "It must have been your fancy, father," said his wife, regarding him anxiously. He shook his head. "Never mind, though. There's no harm done, but it gave me a shock all the same." They sat down by the fire again while the 2 men finished their pipes. Outside the wind was higher than ever, and the old man started nervously at the sound of a door banging upstairs. A silence, unusual and depressing, settled on all 3, which lasted until the old couple rose to retire for the rest of the night. "I expect you'll find the cash tied up in the big bag in the middle of your bed," said Herbert, as he bade them good night, "and something horrible squatting on top of your wardrobe watching you as you pocket your ill-gotten gains." He sat alone in the darkness, gazing at the dying fire. I'm petting my cat, by the way, and seeing faces in it. The last was so horrible and so simian that he gazed at it a moment. It got so vivid that, with a little uneasy laugh, he felt on the table for a glass containing a little water to throw at it. His hand grasped the monkey's paw, and with a little shiver he wiped his hand on his coat and went up to bed. Part 2. In the beginning of the wintry sun next morning it streamed over the breakfast table. He laughed at his fears. There was an air of prosaic wholesomeness about the room which it had lacked on the previous night, and the dirty, shriveled little paw was pitched on the sideboard with a carelessness which betokened no great belief in its virtues. "I suppose all soldiers are the same," said Mrs. White. "The idea of listening to such nonsense. How could wishes be granted in these days? And if they could, how could £200 hurt you, father?" "Might drop on his head from the sky," said the frivolous Herbert. "Morris said the things happened so naturally," said his father, "that you might, if you so wish, attribute it to coincidence." "Well, don't break into the money before I came back," said Herbert, as he rose from the table. "I'm afraid it'll turn you into a mean, avaricious man, and we shall have to disown you." His mother laughed, and following him to the door, watched him down the road, and returning to the breakfast table, was very happy at the expense of her husband's credulity. All of which did not prevent her from scurrying to the door at the postman's knock, nor prevent her from recurring somewhat shortly to retired sergeant majors of bibulous habits, where she found that the post brought a tailor's bill. "Herbert will have some more of his funny remarks, I expect, when he comes home," she said as they sat at dinner. "I dare say," said Mr. White, pouring himself out some beer. "But for all that, the thing moved in my hand, that I'll swear to it." "You thought it did," said the old lady soothingly. "I say it did," replied the other. "There was no thought about it. I just had, 'What's the matter?'" The wife made no reply. She was watching the mysterious movements of a man outside, who, peering in an undecided fashion at the house, appeared to be trying to make up his mind to enter. In mental connection with the £200, she noticed that the stranger was well dressed and wore a silk hat of glossy newness. 3 times he paused at the gate and then walked out again. The 4th time he stood with his hand upon it, and with a sudden resolution flung it open and walked up the path. Mrs. White at the same moment placed her hands behind her, and hurriedly unfastening the strings of her apron, put that useful article of apparel beneath the cushion of her chair. She brought the stranger, who seemed ill at ease, into the room. He gazed at her furtively and listened in a preoccupied fashion as the old lady apologized for the appearance of the room and her husband's coat, a garment which he usually reserved for the garden. She then waited for as patiently as her sex would permit for him to broach in his business, but he was at first strangely silent. "I was asked to call," he said at last, and stooped and picked a piece of cotton from his trousers. "I come from Ma and Megan's." The old lady started. "Is anything the matter?" she asked breathlessly. "Has anything happened to Herbert? What is it? What is it?" Her husband interposed. There, mother," he said hastily. "Sit down and don't jump to conclusions. You've not brought bad news, I'm sure, sir," added the other wistfully. "I'm sorry," began the visitor. "Is he hurt?" demanded the mother wildly. The visitor bowed in assent. "Badly hurt," he said quietly, "but he's not in pain." "Oh, thank God," said the woman, clasping her hands. "Thank God for that. She broke off as the sinister meaning of the assurance dawned on her, and she saw the awful confirmation of her fears in the other's averted face. She caught her breath and, turning to her lower-witted husband, laid her trembling hand on his. There was a long silence. "He was caught in the machinery," said the visitor at length in a low voice. "Caught in the machinery," repeated Mr. White in a dazed fashion. "Yes." He sat staring out the window and taking his wife's hand between his own, pressed it as he had wont to do in their old courting days nearly 40 years before. "He was the only one left to us," he said, turning gently to the visitor at his heart. The other coughed and, rising, walked slowly to the window. "The firm wishes me to convey their sincere sympathy with you and your great loss," he said without looking round. "I beg that you will understand I am only their servant and merely obeying orders." There was no reply. The old woman's face was white, her eyes staring and her breath inaudible. On the husband's face was a look such as the friend the sergeant might have carried into his first action. "I was to say that Ma and Megan's disclaim all responsibility," continued the other. "They admit no liability in all, but in consideration of your son's services, they wish to present you with a certain sum as compensation." Mr. White dropped his wife's hand, and rising to his feet, gazed with a look of horror at his visitor. His dried lips shaped the words, "How much?" £200 was the answer. £200! Unconscious of his wife's shriek, the old man smiled faintly, put out his hands like a sightless man, and dropped, a senseless heap, to the floor. Part 3. In the huge new cemetery some 2 miles distant, the old people buried their dead, and came back to the house steeped in shadows and silence. It was all over so quickly that at first they could hardly realize it, and remained in a state of expectation as though of something else to happen, something else which was to lighten this load, too heavy for old hearts to bear. But as the days passed and expectation gave way to resignation, the hopeless resignation of the old, sometimes miscalled apathy. Sometimes they hardly exchanged a word, for now they had nothing to talk about, and their days were long to weariness. It was about a week after that the old man, waking suddenly in the night, stretched out his hand and found himself alone. There was in darkness and the sound of subdued weeping coming from the window. He raised himself in bed and listened. "Come back," he said tenderly. "You will be cold." "It is colder for my son," said the old woman, and wept afresh. The sounds of her sobs died away on his ears. The bed was warm and his eyes heavy with sleep. He dozed fitfully and then slept until a sudden wild cry from his wife awoke him with a start. "The paw!" she cried wildly. "The monkey's paw!" He started up in alarm. Where is it? What's the matter?" She came stumbling across the room toward him. "I want it," she said quietly. "You've not destroyed it." "It's in the parlor on the bracket," he replied, marveling. "Why?" She cried and laughed her together and bending over kissed his cheek. "Oh, I only just thought of it," she said hysterically. "Why didn't I think of it before? Why didn't you think of it?" "Think of what?" he questioned. "The other 2 wishes," she replied rapidly. "We've only had one." "Was that not enough?" he demanded fiercely. "No," she cried triumphantly. "We'll have one more. Go down and get it quickly and wish our boy alive again." The man sat in bed and flung the bedclothes from his quaking limbs. "Good God, you are mad," he cried aghast. "Get it," she panted. "Get it quickly and wish. Oh, my boy! Oh, my boy!" Her husband struck a match and lit the candle. "Get back to bed," he said unsteadily. "You don't know what you are saying." "A coincidence," stammered the old man. "Get back to bed. You don't understand. We had the first wish granted," said the old woman fiercely. "Why not the second?" "A coincidence," stammered the old man. "Go get it and wish," cried his wife, quivering with excitement. The old man turned and regarded her. His voice shook. "He has been dead 10 days, and besides, I would not tell you else. But I could only recognize him by his clothing. If it was too terrible for you to see, then how much? How now?" "Bring him back," cried the old woman, and dragged him toward the door. "Do you think I fear the child I have nursed?" He went down in the darkness and felt his way to the parlor, and then to the mantelpiece. The talisman was in its place, and a horrible fear that the unspoken wish might bring his mutilated son before him ere he could speak from the room seized upon him, and he caught his breath as he found that he had lost the direction of the door. His brow cold with sweat, he felt his way round the table and groped along the wall until he found himself in the small passage with the unwholesome thing in his hand. Even his wife seemed changed as he entered the room. It was white and expectant, and his fear seemed to have an unnatural look upon it. He was afraid of her. "Wish!" she cried in a strong voice. "It is foolish and wicked," he faltered. "Wish!" repeated his wife. He raised his hand. "I wish my son alive again." The talisman fell to the floor, and he regarded it fearfully. Then he sank, trembled into a chair as the old woman, with burning eyes, walked to the window and raised the blind. He sat until he was chilled with the cold, glanced on occasionally at the figure of the old woman peering through the window. The candle end, which had burned below the rim of the china candlestick, was throwing pulsating shadows on the ceiling and walls until, with a flicker larger than the rest, it expired. The old man, with an unspeakable sense of relief at the failure of the talisman, crept back to his bed, and a minute afterward the old woman came silently and apathetically beside him. Neither spoke, but sat silent, listening to the ticking of the clock. A stair creaked, and a squeaky mouse scurried noiselessly through the wall. The darkness was oppressive, and after lying for some time screwing up his courage, he took the box of matches, and striking one, went downstairs for a candle. At the foot of the stairs, the match went out, and he paused to strike another. And at the same moment, a knock, so quiet and steady, stealthy as to be scarcely audible, sounded on the front door. The matches fell from his hand and spilled in the passage. He stood motionless. His breath suspended until the knock was repeated. Then he turned and fled swiftly back to his room and closed the door behind him. A third knock sounded through the house. "What's that?" cried the old woman, starting up. "A rat," said said the old man, shaking in shaking tones. A rat. It passed me on the stairs. His wife sat up in bed listening. A loud knock resonated through the house. It's Herbert. She ran to the door, but her husband was before her and catching her by the arm. He held her tightly. What are you going to do? He whispered hoarsely. It's my boy, Herbert! She cried, struggling mechanically. I forgot it was 2 miles away. What are you holding me for? Let go. I must open the door. For God's sake, don't let it in, cried the old man, trembling. You're afraid of your own son, she cried, struggling. Let me go. I'm coming, Herbert. I'm coming. There was another knock and louder. The old woman, with a sudden wrench, broke free and ran from the room. Her husband followed to the landing and called after her, appealingly as he hurried downstairs. He heard the chain rattle back and the bolt drawn, slowly and stiffly from the socket. Then the old woman's voice, strained and panting. The bolt! She cried loudly. Come down, I can't reach it! But her husband was on his hands and knees, groping wildly on the floor in search of the paw. If only he could find it before the thing outside got in. A perfect fusillade of knocks reverberated through the house. And he heard the scraping of a chair as his wife put it down in the passage against the door. He heard the creaking of the bolt as it came slowly back. And at the same moment he found the monkey's paw and frantically breathed his third and last wish. The knocking ceased suddenly. Although the echoes of it were still in the house, he heard the chair draw back and the door opened. A cold wind rushed up the staircase, and a loud, long wail of disappointment and misery from his wife gave him the courage to run down to her side and then to the gate beyond. The street lamp flickering outside, the street lamp flickering opposite, shone on a quiet and deserted road. So that was the monkey's paw. I thought it was longer. So let's do your Cumbrian. And I wanted to tell you, I made a Facebook group for all of us here. It is called, let me get the exact name, and then I'll bring up Argos Patrick deck. And I was able to fix it to make the cards bigger, and I can blow them up to the whole screen now. So stick around for that. It looks nice. Hold on, let me find I want to give you the right name of the Facebook group. I made it the other day. Hold on, where is it? I'm gonna put the link for it too, but if you wanna, okay, it's gonna be called The Cumbrian Hearth of Ghost and Lore. So the Cumbrian Hearth of Ghost and Lore, and it's, it's atmospheric. It's for ghosts. It's not ghost hunting. It's not like paranormal stuff. It's not gonna be anything tarot culty. This is like a space for talking about literary ghost stories, folk stories, that type of thing. It's as if we're all sitting around a hearth in Cumbria and having a good time talking about literary ghost stories and folklore. And it could be like any folklore, but I mean, I like British folklore mostly, but Wales, Cumbria. But if you have like some stories, like maybe Brittany, something Celtic, something French, something French or Celtic, or even, I guess that there's even something Italian too. But so let's do the tarot reading now. And but anyway, so come and join the group. And okay, let's do we're gonna do the cold embrace afterwards. Hold on, where is it? Okay, can you see this? I don't know if you can. Okay, it looks like you can. Let me turn the computer a bit. Okay, so let's do. So first of all, I don't know if you can see, that's the back. It's the kite bird and the skull, and then like some Celtic knotwork. Oh, and I think the ravens are right there. They're facing each other. I don't know if you can see them. Okay, let's do 7 cards tonight. I'm in adventurous mood. Ooh, the devil. Okay, so this can come up. This can mean Can you see the whole thing? Here, I think you guys can. The Devil card can be lust, obsession, feeling like you're bound, chained to something. Here's the thing, though. This is not a scary card. I know people get scared of the devil because we're all conditioned to be afraid of certain things and whatever, but the devil card is, first of all, the chains are loose. You can take the chains off. You're not, you think you're bound, but you could take the chains off and be free. So there's something, though, maybe like lust, obsession. Queen of Cups. I love that you can finally see the detail. Okay. So Queen of Cups. So this is like, this could be your feminine energy. Like you're feeling like you're maybe bound to something and it's upright. So you're not cutting yourself off, but this can represent a woman or it could represent the feminine energy. Let's see what the other cards are because that'll give me a better idea of which one it is in this context. Okay, King of Pentacles. So this is, because stones is pentacles. This is like earthy, grounded. This could even be like your masculine and your feminine side of whoever like is watching this. That maybe like you're feeling bound or something. This could also be a couple. Okay, 9 of Wands. So you have been, you're like hanging on, but you're battered, you're bruised. It's like the warrior that's battered, bruised. You've been carrying a burden too long. You're still standing, but this burden that you're carrying is like, it's like too much for you. Maybe it's like even saying you're out of balance because you think you're bound. And so your feminine and masculine are out of bounds, and like this thing that you're carrying, you feel yes. Okay, so 5 of Pentacles, you feel left out in the cold. You feel left out. You're for some reason you feel like you're looking in at something, feeling left out. But the devil is like in your head, and this is probably your thoughts in your head. I have a feeling it is. Let's see what our last 2 cards. Okay, the 10 of Cups reversed, so you're blocking yourself. You feel left out in the cold, so you're blocking. It's probably you're blocking yourself with your thoughts, though. Okay, 2 of Wands, so this is like maybe a choice. It could be like looking out at the world. You could be at a crossroads of something, and it's like, I feel like I'm gonna just pull like, oh, you know what? Do they work? I've got to see the where did they gave me the other ones? Where's those other readers? Hang on. They might be here. And I don't have to go in the admin on this thing though, because you guys will see too much stuff. I don't want to show you the back end of the shop. Let me see. I'm trying to see if I have it marked. Hold on. Is it the readers? I know I have them. Because I want to read from the market decks, but these ones are bigger. We fixed them. Hold on. Maybe they're not yet. All right, we might have to still do it on the Veiled Rose Manor page then. Let's pull up Margaret, because I feel like we need like there's some more. Let's do 5 cards. Why not? Okay, so this one I can't make big enough yet, but King of Pentacles is upright. The 2 of Pentacles is upright. So this is like balance. There's something with grounded energy. Ace of Cups. The 6 of Swords reverse. So this is like, when this is upright, you're like moving away from troubled waters. This is there's like some block though. And the Emperor reverse. You're not feeling your power. You're maybe grounded, but the 2 of Swords upright. Did I say stones earlier? The 2 of Swords upright is there's like some choice or something maybe with like something with tender and loving, and there's this blocked right here. So with 6 of Swords blocked, it's like maybe there's like travel plans are blocked. It feels like something with travel, and the Emperor reversed is you're not feeling on top of your game for some reason. So that I think that maybe does go back though to that Devil card. That like you think you're bound by something but you're not. See, look at here's the Lover. So this could be like a relationship that you're like thinking about, but you're like mind effing yourself, basically. Four of Cups reversed. So you start to come out of this energy, though. That's actually good. And then the Eight of Swords upright. This is again like with the devil. With the Eight of Swords, it's the same thing. You think you're like chained and you're not. The blindfold comes off, the chains come off. Let me just see if there's anything more Margaret wants to tell us. You got the World upright, so it's like unfinished business. Something is cycling back around. There's something fated and karmic about this connection. But the Emperor reverse, you are blocking yourself because you're mind effing yourself. And because you're mind effing yourself, you're the Page of Cups, it's like you're blocked in it. So let me see if she has any more advice for you. Temperance upright, try to be in balance. King of Cups reverse. I feel like it's saying stop blocking yourself. Stop focusing on the past. Stop focusing on what's behind. Look at what's the present now and what's ahead. And let's just see if Ghost Patrick wants to add anything else. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. 5, I guess, fine. Yeah, temperance again. So balance, divine timing. Aren't these beautiful? I'm so happy now I can see the bigger picture. Again, King of Pentacles. So this was... Okay, so something about you feel grounded in some things, but the Emperor, you're not feeling in your power. So there's something going on there with that. The Two of Cups is reversed, so it's like, I think maybe, and it might even be like finances, it feels like. Something with finances is... Wait, the finances is upright, but there's something here that's blocked. There's something like unresolved with like this pair. And, oh, see, now you can finally see all the detailing. And then you've got the full going. So this is like, you're going to maybe like make a new beginning, it seems like, or like a new direction. Something new. There's something new energy here with this. You're not afraid anymore. You stop being blocked. And you're not afraid, and so you take the leap. The Tower moment, too. So the Tower maybe has something to do with the devil. Like, it's like you're going to maybe feel like cracked open or like you're smacked upside the head. But you'll survive it. The Magician, you've got agency. You've got everything you need to resolve this and to move forward. Aren't these cards beautiful? I just love this deck. And now you can finally see the beauty of it. I mean, this... I don't want to say this is not how I imagined Ghost Patrick looking, though. I feel like, first of all, he had a beard. Because I had a dream about him recently, and this is kind of more like a... I don't want to say a fantasy version, but, like... He had a beard, actually. And, it was interesting. So, like... Because I had a dream... I think it was Monday, actually. This past Monday. Was it Monday? It had to be. It was something like that. But I had this dream about the real Ghost Patrick. And for some reason he was eating like pear and cheese, and he was like happy I made the deck. And we didn't like talk too long though, or if we did, I don't even remember what we talked about, but just he's happy I made the deck.